Is it on go or is it on 3 or is it on 1?
Problematic.
I'm Marquise.
Problematic. Problematic. Look out podcast. Here, Sito in the building. Problematic.
It's your boy Juju.
Problematic. Look out podcast. Problematic.
Yo, what did my man just say then?
Problematic.
Yo, you're listening to Mr. Rock.
Problematic. Cookout podcast.
Yo, what's up, young chefs? Welcome back to another episode with you already know the problematic cookout. Your boy Juju in here always.
It's Marquise with it.
Your Sito's in the building.
And Mr. Rock's right here still.
And we are excited to be back with yet another episode. Today we bring to you another controversial topic, and that is the decriminalization of different drugs. On November 4th, 2020, the state of Oregon made history by decriminalizing the possession of drugs such as heroin, methamphetamine, LSD, oxycodone, and other hard drugs. Instead of going to trial and facing possible jail time, a person would have the option of paying a $100 fine or attending new addiction recovery centers funded by millions of dollars in tax revenue from Oregon's legalized regulated marijuana industry. Now, a lot of people consider this a victory for the state of Oregon. But let's discuss this thing objectively here. And I want to know what you guys have to do. We'll bring the facts in, the consequences, and speak about it. But off the top, guys, what are you guys' thoughts and feelings about this topic?
Well, for me, any non-violent crime that a lot of people are in jail for like extended periods of time, that's unreasonable. Any law that that doesn't allow for people like that to go to jail for extended periods of time, I'm all for, because if they're not hurting the environment or like other people, you know, they shouldn't even really be in jail in the first place if whatever they're doing could be reversed. So I think this is a win for Oregon.
Marquise, your thoughts?
I think it's a step in the right direction, and just to speak on that a little bit. I think people kind of need to understand the difference between decriminalizing these drugs and legalizing these drugs, because if you're kind of like me, coming to the situation with no background info, you would assume, to decriminalize it, that means anyone can do whatever they want. They can shoot up all these drugs, or just basically have a free for all. But actually, there's a difference between legalizing and decriminalizing a drug. Basically, decriminalizing it removes the criminal aspect of getting caught, but it replaces it, like you said, Juju, with fines and avenues for them to seek help. So I think in the long run, this will help whoever who's unfortunately addicted to drugs or gets caught using or abusing drugs. Yes, they'll get caught, but instead of sending them to jail where they will not get any help, now they have an opportunity to, get some assistance and help them through the situation.
Yeah, I personally think it's a good step in the right direction. But, just looking at the finer print of things, it'd be really interesting to see like how all this is going to work in terms of like the support that's provided, especially in specific neighborhoods. As it is, there's probably, less resources for, community outreach and support and things like that. So are they going to make sure those things are in the right place for the right people at the right times? And then you add into that, there's fines. What if you can't pay the fine? What's the impact of that? How many fines can you get before you end up having to go to prison? So there's a fine line and a balance that they need to make sure that they're actually, implementing this the correct way, because it could have a negative effect on poorer communities as a whole. Because if you can't afford $100 and another $100 and another $100, then what happens then? You're just back into the system. Is it, if you can't pay, then you have to do this, and you have to do the community service or the rehabilitation. If that's the case, then it's a good process. But then you'll have people that, if you're a drug addict if you're really on it hard, you know, for one, any money that you're getting, you want to go and buy something else.
For sure.
Like if you're a hardcore, you know, drug addict. And then secondly, how are you going to get these people to actually go to rehabilitation if there's no one there to support them? So as long as they have the whole structure ready to implement this, they can put in a law that might only impact, you know, the well-off, the wealthy people that are, you know, that take, you know, certain particular drugs or whatnot because it's part of their, you know, their lifestyle. But then the people that are down the bottom, potentially, you know, it could have a negative effect on them, you know. So it really needs to see what the finer print of it is.
But I guess my question to that would be then for you, like, it sounds like you're in support of decriminalizing it, but not so much with the fine and the consequence that will come with that. But like, then what would be your solution? And I guess we can get into the solution later, but then are you saying they shouldn't even be the fines, or?
No, I think the fine should be there.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just making sure that it's fair. It's making sure that, like, the facilities that are, you know, in certain communities are there for those people. You know what I mean? Because you could put this action plan together or whatnot, but if there isn't facilities to help those people, and it doesn't mean just the, you know, if people are caught, then they should go to these facilities. These facilities should be there full stop. If they're not there at the minute, then, you know, there needs to be enough resources in the right neighborhoods. Because if you've got more of a drug issue in a particular area, but then you're balancing them out of, you know, support groups and, you know, centers in affluent areas where there isn't that many issues, and the quality of service there is different. You know, all the lights and whistles can be there, but, you know, the foundation of it, is it really there? You know, it all looks so pretty, but have they really tied it down to make sure that it's not impacting people in the long run? Main reason I say that, there's been other, you know, laws that have been put into practice throughout the hundreds of years that America's been there, and it seemed like a good idea at the beginning, but then they realized later on down the line, oh, it only affected this, you know, community of people. So, you know, people need to be really aware.
For sure. No, that makes sense. And I would say, like, for my sake, like, I disagree with, you know, basically all three of y'all, because for my sake, there's a few reasons for it, but when I look at, you know, the drugs, and I think that I'll touch on that when I ask my next question, but the impact on drugs on the people, and then completely taking away the consequences for not starting in the first place. I think that should be the issue that we attack. Instead of saying, like, well, now that you're in the dependency already, like, we should be looking at, like, what causes the dependency and attack that issue, and, you know, find solutions to help the people that are stuck in the dependency, but not taking away the incentive not to do it. Because if you're looking at, you know, a teenager or someone, like, how those addictions start, right? Like, if you're looking at, if I'm in high school and I have a little money or whatever, I'm not thinking, yo, if I have to pay $100 fine, heck yeah, I'm gonna try this drug. Why not? You know, like, so there's no incentive not to try it in the first place. And then you get in a situation where, now I totally agree that prison is no way, shape, or form the place to rehabilitate. And we need a better solution and, you know, better centers for the people that are stuck in the addiction. But I think that, you know, taking, like, decriminalizing it and making it easier to get off if you're, I don't know, if it's your first offense and things like that, but you're young and you just wanted to try, and now you have no reason not to try. I think that doesn't sit right with me. But another reason that I say that is because I look at the name of the drugs that are on that list, and, you know, I look at what things like heroin can do. Like, I've seen addiction, right? Like, first thing, I think we probably all have, but oxycodone, heroin, methamphetamine, like, those LSD, those aren't like your little weed and things like that. And so I want to speak a little bit about the effects of those drugs and how how dangerous it can be, because these aren't, like I said, those aren't marijuana. Those are drugs that can lead to death and overdoses. So you guys tell me what you guys think about this.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting when you talk about, like, the bigger picture of it, like, the impact that it has, and people having the option and choice to do it, and that being a deterrent. But one of the things I think about is, people that get arrested for these things and go to prison, what kind of support is there for them then? And I know some of these drugs are super hard drugs. Like, I've known, like, when I first left home where I was living, there was a guy that lived in our building, and he was on heroin. Yeah, and you can see the demon in that person. Like, they become something totally different, and the way they interact and the way they behave and things like that. And being out there in normal society, taking those drugs and feeling that way and having an impact like that is a scary thing. For anybody coming across that person, for that person themselves, it's a life risk that they're taking every time they shoot up or whatnot. But the other side of it, like I said, once you go into one of those prison environments, what support is there for them? Because there's people in prison that still take the same drugs as when they're out, and they're not getting that kind of support. So, if they were doing something where they were, taking these people off the street to say, okay, you've been caught with this, you have to go to this center and you have to stay there, like a prison, but it's a rehab, then that could be argued as a better way to approach it. But there needs to be some form of new way of managing this, because the prison system are making money off these people going in, so that same money that they could be spending with that person being in jail, in prison, they could help those people out in the community. And I do understand where you're coming from in terms of if something becomes more accessible, because you feel like, well, I'm not going to get sent to prison if I have this. But the money has to circulate in a different way to support people, to educate young people, to the same money that they put into the prison systems, they need to be put into the schools and all the other community organization that can be supporting people from that point of view.
Okay, so before I move on, Rock, like the thing is, I still think that it's important to actually speak about the impact of the drugs, right? And once again, I still do believe that we need better support system, and there's ways to support people, without decriminalizing it. Like, I think that there's still ways to support people that are on the outside and that are dealing with these addictions, but we're speaking about, like you said, like the people that are on heroin, that are the opioids crisis. Like, I was looking through the stats, killed over 450,000 people from 2000 until 2018. Yeah, this is a real, and it's only getting worse. Yeah. So it's like, go ahead. So I want to speak about the real, like, impact of the actual drug on someone. So yeah,
it does have a dramatic impact on family, first and foremost, parents that are taking it, kids that are taking it, and then parents trying to deal with them and managing them and things like that. It can be life changing for everybody, but I would, it's kind of,
you mind if I jump in there?
I'm not even too sure to break it. Yeah, you
go ahead.
So in the article, it says how they legalize weed, they legalize marijuana. They're probably gonna put some kind of tax on marijuana businesses, right, to generate revenue to support the social programs that rehabilitate, right?
For sure.
Part of those centers that will be rehabilitating they must do this. They have to set up some kind of drug-free class where in like some kind of educational situation, like whether it be a school or something where they work closely with the community to educate on the downfall of these drugs. Because I think a lot of people just end up in the wrong place at the wrong time, where, you know, this person who has access to these drugs are doing these drugs, and, you know, peer pressure, oh, this guy's cool, hey, you want to try it? And then, you know, that person inadvertently created another addict, right? But they didn't know what they were even getting into before they got predisposed to that situation. Then you also got crack babies. Unfortunately, you know, their parents were always on these drugs to begin with, and they're just born into that environment. And, you know, that's also another place where it has to start. But a big part of it has to be education for me. Like, you gotta teach them, like, hey, if you want to take this drug, if this is what the side effects are going to be, and you know, if they happen to fall into the that world of taking that drug, at least they know that there's a facility that can try and put them back on the right track, because it is all free will. You can't completely stop someone from doing what they want to do. If they want to shoot cocaine, they can shoot cocaine and do whatever they want.
Here's the thing about that though, Sid. Regardless of all, you know, you can have all these deterrents and you can have all this education and people telling you drugs are bad, don't do them.
Yeah.
I feel like people are still going to do them. Like, there's always going to be that one person who's going to say, oh man, let me just try it one time just to know how it feels, just to know how it tastes, what's the after effect. They may never try that drug again, but I don't think we can actually stop people from doing drugs. Like I personally don't know anyone who's ended up, you know, getting addicted to drugs or like deep in it, but like, I've heard the stories, right? And I've been presented with opportunities where I know people who are doing them. They're like, yo, here, try this. And I'm just like, yeah, you know what? It's cool. I don't.
Yeah. Some people just want to go for the next harder drug, the crazier.
Exactly.
And that's my point. That's
going.
My point is that if you know, you're always going to go into, addicts aren't created because, you know, they didn't start their first or smoke their first joint or start drugs by saying like, I'm going to become an addict. Like, they started with, oh, I'm looking for this high. Now I look for the next high because this high isn't doing it anymore. And now they look for the next high. And then it's, oh, I'm doing it every day because I need to feel good. And next thing you know, you're an addict. But the reality for me is, if there's not a person that starts doing drugs that isn't aware that, like, of the potential. Everyone just thinks it's not going to be them. Yeah. Like that it could potentially lead to death, right?
But that's
like,
also a lack of education.
But how is it lack of education? People are aware that it could lead.
Yeah.
They already know. But if you tell me that, like, knowing that you may either die or go to jail, and people still do it, and now you remove the having to potentially go to jail, and you tell me that now people are going to listen to you and say like, oh yeah, I'm not going to try these things. It's I think that we need a little bit of that fear factor. But yeah, go ahead, Rock.
Just sat here, just listening to that now. I've just actually, you know, had a different, you know,
just switched up the position.
Swing states.
Oh, swing states, man.
He pulled a Biden in Pennsylvania.
He just pulled out Atlanta.
Trump, by the way, okay?
Oh, got a Republican in disguise. Oh man,
I'm Biden on the way, man.
You done turned to Georgia on this, man.
But here's the thing, right? Like, when you talked about if it's not it's decriminalized, right? Yeah. And I actually thought about it, like, here in Canada, now they've decriminalized weed, right?
No,
cannabis.
Weed is legalized, not decriminalized.
It's legalized.
Oh, it's legalized.
Yeah.
Two different things,
So
Rock.
Okay, but in the same breath, yeah, there's still the element of, now I won't get in the same level of trouble, or I'm not going to get in trouble here for, you know, smoking cannabis. If you're selling it, it's a different thing, but without a license. But the fact that you can do it, I know there's more people, like you say, that will be like, well, you know, I can try it now. It's legal. I ain't got nothing to worry about. Okay. You know, I can carry this zoot, as they call it in the UK, in my pocket, and it's all good. I can take this little, you know, 5-10 bag, and it's all good. And then you're kind of like, oh, let me just try it. Let me just shoot, you know, let me just smoke one. and it's that kind of mind state, like you say, if there's a less repercussions from having it, then people will, take more of a risk to try it.
But they still know the effects, though.
I mean, but what about like high functioning addicts? Like, not to say I'm on the side of people taking drugs, but you guys seen Wolf of Wall Street? Mr. Jordan Belfort.
Good movie.
He was on drugs the whole movie, and at the same time he had a successful stock company until he started doing the illegal stuff. But if somebody
go overboard,
if someone is addicted to the drug, can still do their job, is not harming the community. How bad is that really? Rather than taking the individual. It's harming him or her, but they're not doing any extra harm to other people. It's only detrimental to themselves. Now, if you take them out and put them into jail, you're causing a vicious cycle where they're just gonna, they lost their job, they lost their source of income, whatever they have left, they're gonna just continuously chase this high because now their like level of their quality of life is now decreased substantially. Where if they could afford the fine, they could pay the fine. If they are willing to rehabilitate, they can go to rehab. But if you put them in jail and just lock the door, put away the key, no rehab, no help, no nothing, they're just gonna relapse once they get back in. So for me, I think if they're trying to at least create social programs to rehabilitate people into society so that they're not a detriment to themselves, that's better than removing them entirely and not helping them, because at the very least, if they are a high functioning addict, they can just continue being a high functioning addict. And if they want to change, they have facilities to help them change and switch out. But then once you create a felon, he's a felon for life. He can't get a job once he come back out. He's probably going to fall harder into the game, trying to get money, go to illegal avenues to create revenue, probably start selling the drug himself on some Scarface stuff. It's I feel like it's more negative going straight to jail than at least offering several of these alternatives for them to get themselves back. Maybe if they do three strikes, then you go to jail and it's like, all right, now we got you 3 times, buddy. Like, you're overdoing it. You need to go to this mandate. They have, like a probation officer, like, yo, if you don't follow up with these courses, you're doing some extra time. I'm pretty sure there's some legislation like that, but that's like that's my take on it. Like, I just feel like decriminalization is a better avenue, because in America, once you do something wrong, you go to jail for life, and in America we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. So
there's obviously a few things to unpack here. And I think that we can keep put a little extra time on this topic for today. But when the first argument that you made was like you're not hurting anyone in the society, which I want to unpack that for a second, because like Marquise mentioned, like, yes, you're hurting yourself, and number two, you brought up the Wolf of Wall Street. You also have to realize the whole impact that has on domestic violence. Like the Wolf of Wall Street, like, he almost ran over his, like, he almost, like, because I looked into like what in that movie is true and what wasn't in the past. And like one of the things that was true is like him running his car into a wall with his daughter in the back seat. So and then you look at the rates of domestic violence in the U.S. and you look at how many of those cases of domestic violence have substance abuse and especially drug abuse involved in them. Now it's a different conversation that of like, is it hurting someone or not? The other argument is the black market, but I'll speak about the black market in a second. But I also think when you speak about, because you said like once you're a felon for life, and you can't get yourself back from it. I also don't think that that's true. It's possible. It's harder. It's extremely hard to get yourself back into the society and rehabilitated once you've had a felony and things like that. But it is possible, because like we've seen it done. But I want people to have that fear, people to be afraid of like, I'm not going to start these drugs because like if I do get caught, it's going to be extremely hard to to build myself back up.
Here's another side of it, though. You know, when people, you know, go for extreme, intense drugs and stuff like that, sometimes it can be an impact of, you know, things that have happened in their past, something that's happened quite recently. They need to get away from it. They need to, you know,
But there's healthier ways to deal with that, and that's what we should
But
teach
when
people.
you don't have the support, because there's not a lot of support out there.
Yeah.
For people, like if you're going through some mental issues and you want to talk to somebody, they'll say, okay, $150 an hour.
Or here's
Whereas
this
you
bottle.
can go down and you can get something to, you know, ease you for a minute. People, that's how people start sometimes. You know, they get into that and it's kind of like,
Yeah,
oh,
but
this
that's
is how
temporary,
I manage. This
bro.
is how I get.
That's temporary.
Nah,
That's-
but
A lot of people just chase that reprieve over and over again. That's so.
Yeah.
It's kind of like drinking alcohol.
Yeah,
like,
but
it's
exactly,
just-
but I also like substance abuse as a whole. Like it's not something that we should be teaching people that like, oh yeah, no, it's all good. Like there's healthier way to deal with a lot of these things. Now, if your argument's gonna be like we need more healthy ways to deal with things and like we need to fund those, like I'll pay all the tax dollars in the world and I'll throw them to that. You know, like I'll do that, but. If you're gonna tell me like, oh no, it's okay to do these, like those lead to death.
No,
Those lead
we're
to
not saying it's okay. Well, not saying it's okay.
Yeah, nobody
but
says okay.
it's the
Yeah,
outlet
it's-
that people need. Like you're in pain, you're gonna get some pain pills. It's a drug. It gets you through a certain period, even though the ailment might still be there, but it gets you through that. And that's how a lot of people, you know, move onto certain drugs because they know it suppresses certain feelings.
But that's the problem, though. Like that's a real deal problem. And like we and I'm not saying that any of us are saying it's okay, but I'm saying like we should take that, like that's what we should take away. Like we should have people be like, no, I can't get myself in even more trouble and more pain than I'm in right now, because you know I'm feeling pain. Like what are the avenues
But
to
I
help?
mean,
So
I think they would suffer some kind of consequence anyway, regardless of if it's being completely illegal and they go to jail, or they're doing it and it's decriminalized, because some part of their life, other than the high functioning addict side that I said, you know, some part of their life they are going to be messing up because of these drugs, and the social systems that they put into place to try and rehabilitate those people, that's jobs being created. You know, that's social workers that, you know, devote their lives and education to like helping people get out of the mess that they've created for themselves.
but we can create the social workers to help them deal with their problems more effectively.
Yeah,
that's
but
also
the thing
job
is,
created.
But they're not gonna hire social workers in the jail, and in the jail it's just gonna be like, all right, you're doing whatever you have to do in the jail.
No,
Especially
I'm
if
talking
it's a
about
private
from the
prison.
source, like before they start the drugs. Like we get the social work. Like we can
Yeah,
either create the social.
Yeah, but part of that education can be created from the revenue from the legalization of marijuana in the state. So that money is going straight into social programs that can help prevent it. It should be able, my bad, I don't know this for sure. It should be going to stuff that's preventative and restorative and rehabilitative.
Okay, so let's actually pivot to that conversation of like the finances then, because and speak more about like how that works, because you know to be quite honest, like I don't know enough, so like I'll probably be taking the backseat here and like think like listening to like how that would actually work, and what the plan is, and speak a little bit about the, you know, what are the factors that we don't think about in those plans. But like, yeah, like Sido, like you were off to it, so kick us off with that.
Yeah. So, beginning with the legalization of weed, for example, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have the exact number, but when Colorado and Washington State both legalized weed for the first time a few years ago. Wait, let me look this up real quick. Gotta go for the transcripts. Colorado weed revenue.
It was about 302 million in 2019.
Well, so far, from what I'm seeing on these articles, Colorado's industry is worth $6.5 billion and has almost 3,000 marijuana businesses and more than 40,000 people who are licensed to work. That is a bunch of jobs. And then at the same time, if you tax it like you would cigarettes or something like that, that is also money going into Colorado's government. And if you really care about the people, you would try to, and like if you're concerned about what they're doing for weed, despite it being legal, you would use that money to create more social systems, more social programs to educate people on drugs, rehabilitate, like I've been saying earlier, and things like that. But if weed wasn't legal, this whole $6.5 billion industry would not exist, because the people that are involved would all be in jail. Well, not all, but most of them would be in jail, where taxpayers are paying more money to support them in jail or create new prisons, unless it's a private prison. And then now you got the private prison. Well, that's a whole thing. Private for-profit prisons, that's a whole other argument. But I just feel like we're losing more money if more people are in jail, because that's more people that are out of work, more people that taxpayers are paying for to support them while they're serving their time. And a lot of times the time that they get is a crazy amount compared to a non-violent crime, right? And then from there, once you decriminalize something like that, that's more tax money and more jobs being created and more preventative measures being taken, as opposed to us just spending an extra $30,000 on this next inmate.
I mean, I guess that's fair, but I guess another thing we probably should point out is that even, for example, with the legalization of weed, all the taxes that the government and the revenues that the government has collected, they haven't said this is specifically going to a specific place.
Exactly.
Right? So it all just gets collected into a pool, and then afterwards it's allocated to the different programs.
Yeah.
So it will be kind of hard to track and say, oh, the decriminalization of weed has actually, resulted in the increase of this many jobs in social work and this many, people being helped. I don't think we'll be able to draw that kind of conclusion. It's unclear. The government could have got that money from anywhere, really.
I mean, it will take some time for someone to analyze that, but
I kind of think they could do that, though.
yeah.
If you own a certain business, they know what business it is. You have to be licensed. You know what taxes are coming from that business. So, that can always be, a percentage of that actually goes directly back into funds that, support, so, governments have the ability to, to do these kind of things. And then also the other side of it is, the legalization of marijuana or whatnot, and growing it and having certain licenses. It's very restricted. It's a very restricted market. You have to have certain credentials. You have to have a certain amount of money. You have to have a certain amount of connections.
Can't
to
be a felon on top of that.
Yeah, to even get into that market. So then the production of it is only for the elite. And then you have to apply for a license, and they could say like, no, you're not having a license, and also it's private companies. So realistically, the government could come ahead and say like, okay, we want to make sure this money comes back into us that we can support, drug users and so on.
Yeah.
They could take more of a control on that.
Yeah.
And make sure that money comes back in. And also, the thing about ex-offenders. These are the people that have, felt the brunt of the criminalization of these drugs, and then now they come out and they're not even allowed to be a part of the, the whole program. These people know a lot more than these people that are, just stepping into the game, and they're just criminals. And now these people have been able to say, okay, it's legalized now. Let me step in and make a whole load of money for me and my family and my connections, and give a little bit of the tax back in, and they'll be looking at ways of how to get around that tax as well. So I think it's a vicious circle. As much as they can paint a picture, the canvas is still behind there, and it's still a bit muddy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there's just so many factors that like are assumed in this case, and one thing to keep in mind is like here we're talking about decriminalization and not legalization of some of these drugs, right? So like, how are you really making money if it's not legalized? That means that you can't just sell it in a store, right? Like, so how is the government really making more money? And okay, like now you're no longer, I guess, putting people in jail. That's great, but now where are you taking the money to give people more support?
Yeah.
And that's just an excuse for the government to be like, oh, well, we don't really have the money to give people more support.
Well,
now you have more people on it. And
I mean, in the Oregon case, they're specifically saying they're taking money from
the weed fund.
From the weed fund, yeah.
But what that weed fund was already allocated somewhere. I don't think that it was just like sitting there.
That was the first time Oregon ever legalized weed. That they legalized weed and decriminalized the other drugs. So this is still all like a work in progress. But
so basically, we got to just watch
wait
and see how they.
Yeah, we do have to wait and see. But I do want to drop some extra facts that I hear from this infographic that I got. Right. Mm-hmm. The mass incarceration in the U.S. per 100,000 people is 655 persons. So out of 100,000 people, it's 655. The people who are second place is like El Salvador, Rwanda's third, Russia's fourth, Brazil's fifth. But and those numbers are 618, 464, 383, 333, and that's based on 2018 numbers, right? So by far we are the U.S. puts more people in jail than any other country in the world, right?
Yeah.
Guess how much percentage of that is drug related? How many the prison population according from 1985 to 2018? Guess how many drug offenses are the population of the felons?
80%. Yeah,
it's about half. Yes, it's 47%. 47% of offenders in jail are in jail for drugs. And now, if you're some kind of mass seller of drugs and you got busted on some El Chapo stuff, that's one thing. But if you had like a little doobie on you or something like that, or a little spliff, and now you're doing like 50 years or whatever crazy sentence you have, you're in this pool. And when you scroll down and look at the numbers by race, more than 60% of the people in jail are black people based on 2018 numbers. So
I think that we need to be careful with those numbers as well, because like those numbers don't tell the whole story, because you, like you said, like you don't know what percentage of those committed violent crimes. You don't know what percentage of those, it was a small drug related charge for having a little weed on you, or if it was for, running a huge drug operation. Another thing to keep in mind, I guess, is that I don't think that means that we need to take away, legalize crimes. Like that just means that, like let's not like make the crime easier to do. Like let's like educate people on not committing the crime. If you tell me that like 90% of people are in jail for killing people, that doesn't mean that we need to legalize killing people. So
I mean, of course, but
so I don't look at those numbers and I'm like I have a revelation.
True, but that's a violent offense, and when it comes to the killing people,
but what are these drugs doing? Like these drugs are killing people.
True, but they're not killing. Like people who take the drugs are putting it on themselves, right? The other like violent crime here, the amount of offenders in here for violent crime is only 7.8% compared to the 47% for drugs. And that's a very staggering statistic. The other numbers here, property offenses 5.7, and then the remaining 39% is a mix of immigration, weapons, like having a weapon illegally, not licensed and stuff, and then the last 15% says other. But 47% is drugs. And for me,
and check out the knock.
What was that?
No, I was just going to say, check on the knock-on effect of being caught with a drug and having to go straight to prison, for
Yeah,
example.
I mean, we've all heard stories of someone having like a 10 milligram thing of weed in the car, or a cop planting it on them, and now that person's life is over. And now if it's decriminalized, that's less of this 47% of people in jail right now in jail, because they just have to pay $100 fine now. So it's like,
But
because
here's
a lot
the
of
thing, I think then this goes back to Juju's original point where he says there should be a limit to it. You know, like you can't just keep giving people slaps on the wrist. If it's a repeated offense, there should be legitimate consequences.
Yeah,
Because how do people learn that? Like, how will people ever learn if, honestly, like, I get that, like, I have a little more money in the bank, but if you tell me, like, I don't know, like, something that I enjoy doing, every time you do it, like, I'm going to charge you $100, I'll be like, sure, keep going. Like, I'll just keep doing. Like, why the heck would I ever stop? Or, like, why would I start doing this stupid thing?
But if they're
like
not doing another crime
kind of thing,
and they're still a functioning member of society, is that entirely bad? Like they're doing detriment to themselves.
Yes, because they will die.
But they've done that to themselves. They're not doing that to someone else.
But that's you saying that person is not as important because they taking drugs.
No,
and
I'm
like
not,
you're taking
saying,
away from.
No, I'm not saying they're not important, but everyone has to suffer for the consequences of their actions. You know, whether you want to be.
Well, I'd much rather someone be in jail than someone be dead.
But if you put them in jail and they come back out and then they go and do the drug anyway, now they're not even contributing to society.
Or even being in jail. And
now you got to pay taxes to cover them in jail when they could have went to this social system and that pays for itself. Now that money's coming out of your pocket.
But like, I still don't understand. Like, how does the social system like pay for itself?
Yeah, because they're
like,
using money from in the Oregon case, they're using money from the weed sales, right? Another country that has been doing this is Uruguay. There's several countries that have decriminalized drugs. And Uruguay, the thing with Uruguay is that drugs are still illegal, right? People, it's illegal to buy drugs, but they have systems in place for the decriminalization part. So those people aren't going to jail. Those people have options and opportunities to like rehabilitate themselves. And then I think they started legalizing weed, so then they could create revenue from legalizing weed to then support the social system some more.
I still, like, my point still comes back to like I get it. Like, I'm not against rehabilitation of drug addicts, but I'm just saying we got to take the problem to the source and just realize that we don't want people to start in the first place. We don't want people to do drugs in the first place, and taking the criminal offense away, like, there's no more, like, people will just be like, sure, I'll try it. But this to come back, and I wanted to speak a little bit about the risks of the that comes with that as well, because there's a huge assumption that, like, oh, we can just sell, like, legalize the weed, make the money off of that, and that's all fine and dandy. But there's also a risk involved, like when you tax a lot of those things. If I were to correlate, because we don't have any studies for this specifically right now, but if I were to correlate it, an example that I would have would be the unions for the car wash industry in New York City right now. So what happens is, like, when you unionize things, you increase, everything becomes more expensive. Therefore, the service has to become more expensive, right? Like the cost of just having a car wash, the cost of like having employees and all those things, everything becomes more expensive. So a lot of people are running to the black market, which is what's happening in the car wash industry. And I'll relate them and correlate those things in a second. So a lot of people are running to the black market car wash industry, which isn't going to taxes. There's less job created and those things. So there's a very good chance of the same thing happening with drugs, because you're legalizing them, but you're putting such a hefty tax on it.
Not legalizing, decriminalizing.
Well, for the weed, in order to make money from it, you need to legalize it. So for the weed situation, you need to legalize it.
Legalized, yes.
Yeah. So you need in order to make money from it, you need to legalize it. So you do that. Now you're putting a bigger tax on it because you need to make money. But because of that hefty tax, there's still a black market that's like, well, I'll sell it for the price I was selling it before, and so that doesn't really take your problem away. But at the same time, the people that they're selling to that have it, you can't stop it.
True, but the fines that they're paying is also a form of tax revenue as well, because every $100 that an offender pays, that's going right back into the system to help rehabilitate and rehab all the lives that are being affected here. So even though they if they're repeat offenders, yes, some deeper intervention needs to be done, but that would be up to the decisions of the police officers and the social workers working in tandem to kind of facilitate that a little bit better. If there's like, hey, this guy's on his 5th offense in the past 6 hours, it's like, no, we need to remove him from whatever. But you can put that person on probation or house arrest or something like that without sending them completely to jail. They have a permanent record and they're screwed for the rest of their lives with this record. And you did say, yeah, you could be a felon and it's hard to get back in your life, but that's not the case for majority of ex-convicts and stuff like that. Once they have something on their record, usually their lives, a lot of the times their lives are
well, if it's possible for one person, why is it not possible for everyone?
I think as a whole other conversation, but
Yeah,
I just want to
that
bring
is-
this back to the point you made about people turning to the black market. Here in Canada, actually, the government has priced weed and weed products actually competitively. So it's actually on the same range, and it kind of deters you from seeking a black market dealer and actually just go and directly buy from the government website or the government stores, or if the private stores as well. But the pricing is pretty much just about the same. So I feel like people would just may as well.
Yeah.
Might as well go the legal route.
Go the legal route.
Yeah, but what is that, Marquise? It's because there's no there's nothing else that they're trying to fund, right? There's not more funding for drug abuse centers and things like that.
I get that.
So that's why. But in order to fund those centers, they would need to raise taxes on weed in Oregon and things like that.
Yeah, but isn't the taxes still there anyway? They don't have to be extreme amounts of money to, push people to go down the road of the black market. But, a sale is a sale. As long as there's a certain percentage coming back in, that's still money that goes back into the system.
No, but because the point you guys are making is that right now it's priced fairly in Canada. But the reason it's priced fairly is because they could have priced it as low as they wanted. It's just more revenue because before it wasn't legal. Now you need to pay for something else, right? You need to, if you're going to decriminalize heroin, you need to have a plan to help heroin users. Meaning
So in that case, then we actually have to see how Oregon ends up pricing weed.
I think that at the end of the day, like you're saying, we're having all these conversations. We are going to have to see, how it goes. But that's a reality. But at the same time, to see these things objectively, those are the things that we need to consider. But,
yeah, it's like a new revenue that wasn't there. So if they're able to, then they should. All taxes from these sales should go back straight in. They should. I'm not saying they're going to, because systems can be corrupt, and they're adding different things, and other organizations will come in and say, oh, we can do the work, but we're pricing it at this level. And, there's many things that need to be looked at. And, this will be a good, I won't say experiment, but everyone can look at what's happening here and then see, the impact of that, and then use that as a structure for using in different areas. But I guess someone's going to take that initiative to try it. I don't really believe that, everything should have been, put through. Do one drug at a time. Manage what you can first, rather than hey, it's open house.
It feels like a free fall to me. I know it's not, but I feel like a free fall to me.
But I'm more for it because, like I said, going back on my stats on the mass incarceration, and 60% of black people being the
Yeah, but
population.
that's also another thing. It's like you got to look at the percentage of black people that are in America, and then you look at the percentage of crime committed by black people. Like they represent 14% of the population and commit something like 80 to 90% of the crimes. Like, so you can't just
but that's only the over police. That's the areas that are actually policed like that. Because if looking at this infographic says rate of imprisonment per 100,000 by gender, race, and ethnicity in 2018. White women, 49 people per 100,000. Black women, 88 people per 100,000. Black men, 2,272. White men, 392. You can't tell me that crazy 392 for white men versus 2,272 for black men. You cannot tell me that is a fair number in terms of the policing, because
but it's not about fairness, bro. Look at what's going on in our communities. Like it's not,
and our
it's not just
communities are over policed, bro. Like here's my thing, right?
bro. There's black people killing each other like every day.
The trap is set,
but
right?
but at the same time, the murder thing was only like a 7%. The 50% is drugs. So even if you apply that to that number, you're telling me that 22
because
2,000
drugs have a bigger impact on our community. Like it's not like drugs aren't impacting our community like they're impacting white people. So
see, but this is my thing, right? I've spoken to people older than me who are like, yeah, when I was in school, I smoked weed, and the police saw us and just kind of let us get away and go back to our dorms and stuff. But at the same time, I've seen black people in jail for life for a dime bag. So that the criminal justice system in the U.S. is very disproportionate towards people of color, and if you're gonna attack them through drugs and over police them through drugs, you can't be wishy-washy with it. If 2,000 black men out of every 100,000 are going to jail for just drugs, there are definitely way more white people doing those drugs, because we're only 13% of the population.
Yep.
Like the numbers don't even make sense there.
Just remember that the sentences and how they classified certain drugs back in the past.
Yeah.
This drug started off as one format, and then was split into two different types of format. But then one format got more time and was harder, frowned upon and came down by the governments. But
I ain't gonna get into this right now, but we got to look at who actually passed those laws and who came up with those laws and who really wanted those things to happen and why. But that's something that people need to research and do their own research. But I still believe that we look at it and we're attacking the wrong problem. Like if we gonna look at that, let's actually look at the crime rates. Like let's look at what's actually destroying our communities.
Yeah, but the rough thing with crime rates is that it's based on where the areas that are getting policed.
If I look at like the murder rate, like the murder rate in a city like Chicago, and a lot of those crimes go unsolved. Yeah. Okay, you didn't tell me that a lot of these people aren't in jail, so a lot of those crimes go unsolved.
Well, what about the murders in all the other areas in non-inner cities? There's probably way more murders that don't get policed at all. But that's a hard I don't know if there's
way more murders.
It's like bro, black people are 13% of the population. How do we have the most murders? Like there's obviously more murders happening.
You tell me how we have
that data's not going to get written if it's not policed correctly. That's a hard stat to even point out if the paperwork isn't even there. But for black people, of course the paperwork's there, because we have cops in all the urban areas like that over policing the neighborhood. And I don't want this to turn into a over policing versus policing thing, but it's like the numbers legit do not they don't correlate, because
they don't correlate, but it's not for the reason that you think. But anyway, we do need to move on with this, and I want to talk a little bit about like for you guys, if you guys think about this, do you guys really think that it's the best solution, and do you guys think that there could be any other solutions, maybe things that could be added to this solution, removed from this solution, or whatnot?
I personally think for now, it is the best solution. I feel like there isn't much else to really go off. We need to start funding these other programs that can help people. Even though we've spoken about how education and early education can help us deter people from getting to this point. We have to accept the fact that regardless of all that, people are still going to end up in this situation, and regardless of that, we still need to help them instead of putting them in jail. And the only way to do that is fund these programs, get them help, regardless of what the situation is. I don't know if you guys remember, but in Toronto, we had the safety injection sites at Moss Park a couple years ago, right? During the opioid crisis. And yes, that sounded foreign and sounded weird to, like a weird concept to all of us, but technically they are helping people. What their main purpose was to provide
the spread of HIV and stuff like that.
Exactly. And even though it's still assisting them to use these drugs, it's still helping them, and that little bit of help to help them stay alive is worth it, right?
Yeah.
So I think
I think the new system that is going on in Oregon will be useful in terms of people that may take illegal drugs. They could be doing other crimes to fund their habit and whatnot, and then they just enter, just in the system as criminals for doing something else. Whereas if there's support there because they are drug addicts, and then they get that specific support, then they're servicing the people of the community. And what we were saying before in terms of, it's not like every week this person might go out and like, oh, it's only $100 fine, I can pay that because I'm spending like $500 on other drugs. As long as there's a structure in terms of like, it could be like a 3-strike rule, for example. First strike you get $100, second strike is $500, or having to go to some kind of facility, or attending some type of workshop or whatnot. And then like we were saying, third strike, I know sometimes third strike might be giving a lot of people a lot of chances, but you're still giving them the option to take the support that's out there to rehabilitate themselves. And if not, then then you're going to sit down and think about it, because you've already been given these opportunities and these chances. So yeah, as long as it's structured like that, I'm supporting it. If there isn't, then it'll be a bit weird, and we could see things going really down in the future in that particular part of the world. For sure. Yeah, Sido.
Yeah, for me, so I have never taken drugs in my life, and to be honest, I don't think I ever will. In as long as I have my goals, then I feel like drugs will ruin that. And I've seen people that I had a lot of faith and trust in go down the route of drugs, and it's not that they, in my opinion, they're high functioning addicts. Not all of them. Some of them, they just do a little reprieve, but they're not addicted. Other people, it's like, I got my 12:30 weed, I got my 4:30 weed, I got my 7 p.m. weed, and they're smoking like multiple times a day, right?
Yeah.
So, and those people, I used to look up to. I used to be like, yo, give me some advice, whatever. And now, I can't look at them in the same light because of the drugs. I don't know if decriminalization is entirely the right direction, but my friends that are still doing drugs are not bad people. They haven't done any violent acts to anyone that I know, and I feel like they shouldn't go to jail just because they are addicted to something. So decriminalization, if it's a route to rehabilitate more people than to detriment them, I'm more for it. And if we can create a more robust system to prevent people from even getting on that warpath in the first place, I'm all for that as well. But other countries do have other decriminalization programs that have been running for years. It's just that our justice system is weird, because when people go to jail in other countries, they get some kind of form of rehabilitation, but America's justice system doesn't work that way for whatever reason. So decriminalization may just be the first step to kind of stirring that pot. Maybe we could look at, justice reform, things like that. Those are topics for another conversation, and that's my take on this.
Yeah.
Just one more thing to add into there. Sorry, we got to think about drugs from many different angles as well. There's people that smoke weed. Like me growing up, people around me smoked weed. I didn't really see it as a big thing. I don't really see it as a big thing now. I do see some of the impacts that it can have on people, but also you got to think about smoking cigarettes, vaping, alcohol. These things that are legal. Some of these things can have a dramatic impact on how you are as a person, can make you more aggressive, can, impact your bodily organs and things like that. So, and then, for, some of those things that I've mentioned, to a lot of people, that's kind of like, okay, it's not really that high of a bad drug or whatnot. But then you can have cocaine. Yeah. To some people, cocaine is like, this is just a party drug. It's nothing.
Then it gets laced with something and they die and they overdose.
But they see it as like, like how we might, or I might see weed, they will see cocaine, because I've known people that be just like, yeah, we do this and that.
My biggest thing with that, as long as you're not taking it as a kid and you're like a full functioning adult and you've chosen to take the drug, that's on you. But if someone influenced like a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old to like take the drug, that's fucked up. So if you can educate the kid early enough to be like, look, this is where you're gonna go, because I've seen people smoking weed from like 9 years old, and like now it's like they're completely demotivated. They do what they
developed yet.
Yeah, they do what they can to get the bag to just buy more weed, not to like, aspire to buy a house, to get a crazy career. And then at 9 years old, if you get arrested, you won't go to jail, but now you're in the system, and now you're gonna get more and more policed, and then when you are an adult, you're probably going to get that lifetime sentence for that dime bag, and that is not okay. It should just be some kind of system to help them, like decriminalization, where they can wean them off if they were exposed at a young age.
Same way with alcohol. There's young kids at 9, 10, 11 drinking. You see them in the parks and everything
taking
like that.
shots. That's crazy.
It's wild.
Yeah. But they don't get the same impact as smoking weed. But it should be something that's
for sure.
Looked at.
Yeah, I personally, I'll have to continue like disagreeing, just from a perspective of someone that's seen a lot of these drugs, and seen a lot of people close to me, and what some of these drugs can like abuse of substances can do to people. But at the same time, like I do agree with Sido when he says that like people that do drugs aren't bad people, and I still believe that people need help. But I'm more for attacking that the issues and the problem and all of that from the core. I don't think that it should be enabled. Like, when we had the conversation around like, oh, it's because they're having a hard time, so we're just going to enable them. Like, I that doesn't sit well with me. Like, there's so many other things that people can be doing other than drugs, and we should be encouraging to do that. And those things don't have to be costing money. Like I know for myself, like I love, like working out helps me deal with my stress. That's a healthy way to do it. That doesn't work for everyone, but how do we encourage more things like that help people, deal with their mental health, deal with what they're coping at the moment, in a little bit more of a healthy way. But this being said, to close off, I am very hopeful, and I do want to believe that these things are being put in place to help people and to provide the help to the people that are in need. So, that continues to be my hope and prayer. But, for today, let us know if you agree with it. Definitely tap in with us on social media. Let us know what you have to say about this, if you agree, disagree. But for today, we are going to log off. So if you enjoyed today, please, once again, rate and review. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on social media and all that good jazz. But guys, this was the Problematic Cookout, and we're signing out. Peace,
y'all.
Peace.
Be good. Stay away
no
from drugs.
Yeah, stay off them drugs, man. Stay off them
Stay off them
perkies.
drugs. I don't care if it's legalized, decriminalized. Don't do it.
Molly Percocet.
Hey, stop that.